Welcome to Retroford. We're in the workshop today and we're going through some of the components we're now going to be manufacturing so that you can put a Duratec in a Mk1 Cortina with our rack and pinion steering. And I'm going to explain some of the components that we've designed so that you can fit this in here with the least amount of modification to the body shell. So I'm going to start with the exhaust manifold. Because the steering column comes down here and it's all very tight, we've had to design a 2-inch primary exhaust manifold that's match length but that fits in this area here, and that was a bit of a challenge, but we've done the first one, so the prototype's done, so they'll be going into manufacturing quite soon. Again, the engine mounts is something we've had to manufacture. Again, this has got a prototype set on. Typically they're MIG welded, we've TIG welded those. But probably the biggest challenge is because the Duratec engine is deeper, the centre line of the engine here is quite a bit deeper, then typically you have to run a loud rack mount cross member. Now if I show you over here on this engine, this is a Zetec. This is on a set of our Zetec engine mounts. This is our rack and pinion steering setup, and we run the steering rack at a set height. And believe it or not, previous to this, the only way that you could get a Duratec into a Mk1 Cortina was to run 15-inch wheels, which sounds crazy, but because of the steering arms that we've designed that are used with an original Cortina front strut. So originally these would be steering box struts, but we've now made a steering arm that gets you to a steering arm and a steering rack. But to keep all the geometry correct, so you've got 0 bump steer over the full suspension travel, and the Ackerman is correct, then to get these in that position, then this ball joint here runs very close to the front wheel. So if you imagine the front wheel's here, the front wheel comes around there, this is very close. So the only way that you can get a Duratec in it, because this part here is so much deeper, is to lower the steering rack. If you lower the steering rack, then you have to lower the ball joints on the end of the steering rack by the same amount. If you were to remanufacture these with them lower, then this ball joint here hits the wheel. So hence the fact that if you want to go Duratec in a Mk1 Cortina, you've got to run 15-inch wheels if you want to use our struts. So we've had to come at it from a different angle. So the rack and pinion kit we already manufacture and is available on our website uses a Cortina front strut, but the new setup that I'm going to run through now runs an escort setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this car up in the air, and then I'm going to run through all the components that on this are different to this setup, and hopefully that should all make sense. So underneath the car now, and we can see that the steering rack has to run lower. Now this has got one of our escort sumps on it effectively, but this runs the rack approximately 15mm lower than the one you can see over here. So if you look at the bottom of where that terminates, just there, you can see that when you look at this one over here, the steering rack is considerably taller, sits up higher. So what this is running is a lowered rack mount to Cortina cross member effectively, and it's running tarmac Bilstein struts with cranked and gusseted tarmac steering arms. Now that corrects all the geometry. This ball joint is lower, and we run with the Bilstein strut, as I've said. The problem with running the Escort stroke Capri Bilstein strut is that the distance between the strut tops on a Cortina is around 1 metre to centre, and on a Mk1 Mark II Escort it's 910. So you've got a cheap 45mm aside. And previously the only real way to do that was to cut the strut tops about. So we've come up with a strut top, which I'm going to show, guy and Luke here, I'm going to show you this strut top here. Now this strut top can only be used with a Bilstein type insert. Simple reason for that is that you need this shallow nut setup that sits below the strut top, and they've also got to be 2 1/4, because if you look on the car under here, there isn't enough room for a full-size spring because you're going to run into the inner wing. So you can see that strut top up there, and you can see how eccentric that has to be to get the correct camber on these. So what we've done is had to make this into a 2-piece top mount. These are the original bolt holes that fit the inner wing, and this then bolts to here, and as you can see, that's then hidden under there. So when I get the car down in a moment, I'll run through what it looks like on the inner wing, because we've made it look like it's factory. So that explains what we're doing with the struts. Again, they'll come with another new product we're doing, which is a 24mm anti-roll bar, and also these are very much the same as what you would get on the standard Zetec kit, if you want to call it that, not the lowered rack mount. The lowered rack mount is only going to be really used in conjunction with the crank steering arms and the tarmac Bilstein struts. Again, it's got our alley hubs on it, and we'll be doing brake kits as well. If you come underneath now, you can see what we've had to do to get the exhaust manifold past the steering column. So this is our rack and pinion steering column. This would come in a kit if you were to buy a full kit. And then these are the secondaries going into this collector here. Now this collector features a 7mm offset, because there's a difference in height on the 2.3, 2.5 and the 2 litre. The 2.3 and the 2.5 is 14mm taller, the block is. So should you want to run, we've currently got 2 litre in here, should you want to run a 2.3, 2.5, use the same manifold, but this collector gets turned 180 degrees and gives you the correct offset. And then moving on to the exhaust system, this is a 2.5-inch system, and what we've had to do is engineer it so that we can keep this nice and close to the car, so we've got good ground clearance. This is part of an exhaust that we already do, and what we've done is now put a crossover pipe, because typically on a Zetec this would come along, this gearbox crossover would be the other way round, the cutout in it will be here, and then you'd be off to your manifold, because the manifold on a Zetec is on the opposite side. So we've had to make a crossover pipe but keep it all nice and tight. Again, we're using the N7 gearbox. Now typically the N7 gearbox is on an adapter plate, but because the N7 gearbox is part of Mazda and the Duratec is part of a Mazda family of engines, then this bolts directly up to the Duratec, because that's part of the Mazda family. So all of this at the moment is all prototype, and we've got all of this here, which is roughly engineered just to hold all this in place while we make the prototypes before we go into full production. So as you can see, we've got all the clearance here for the sump, and again all this will be on the website, and you'll be able to buy a complete kit for putting a Duratec into a Mk1 Cortina. So I'm going to get it back down on the floor and just run through the strut tops and what needs doing up there. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. Yeah, so we've got the car lowered down now, and I'm going to explain the strut tops and how that works. So effectively we've got capri legs on there, so what we're going to try and achieve is the distance between the strut tops on our Mk1, Mk2 Escort on our legs. So normally on a standard Cortina, the distance from the centre of there to the centre of there is approximately a metre, so 1,000mm, and we're looking to get down to 910. So to get the correct camber on the leg, we've got to get these over 45mm. If you go over 45mm, you end up with a strut top somewhere near this nut and hole here. So what I would have done traditionally if it was a car that was rotten would have remanufactured all of this and moved all this over. But so that you can retrofit it to a car that's not been messed about with, like this car has got all its original strut tops, and that's some of the reason we use this car for mocking up, because we know that dimensionally it's correct because it's never been messed about with. So if you look at this side here, this looks like a standard strut top almost. What we've got there, that's the original dust cover that sits in there on our alley ring. Now over here is, you can see this, it's a two-part strut top so that we can get the geometry. So this lives on there obviously, and your strut top will live underneath this plate here. So this is a two-part strut top. We bolt this on here, and then once we've got that lined up on the 3 bolt holes like that, so if I now bring this over, the 3 studs that stick up here, which that will live under there, this is give you your 45mm over there. This will now come underneath here, bolt on there, and that allows you to put your original dust cap back on there and give you the geometry you want. So that's basically a run through of all the components that we're doing for Cortinas. There's a few other things we've got in the pipeline, like silicone hoses we'll be doing. The suspension will be available as a complete kit. Again, the throttle body kits will be available as well. So we're sort of ticking off all the things so that, much like the Zetec kit we do, it all bolts on. Now, some of you people may know this car. This had a 255 horsepower ST170 engine in it, but the engine's out at the moment, having some work done on it. Going to try and squeeze some more horsepower out of it. So although this has got a Duratec at the minute, we've been using this car as a mock-up car. It's a blue car that we're going to be building, that we will do a full video on, but at the moment that's got to be pulled to bits, and I've got to finalise all the bits on this, be sure I'm happy with everything before we go into full production. So along with the strut tops and the steering kit and the engine mounts, exhaust manifold, exhaust system, they will work in conjunction with all the parts that we already manufacture, such as bias pedal boxes, gearbox cross members. So yeah, we're slowly ticking our way through the Duratec parts because of the demand for the Duratec stuff. We're getting more and more inquiries. So with a bit of luck, before the summer's out, I should have the engine back in this. And then probably the next video we'll do will probably be the blue car on the ramp, with us disassembling that, getting it ready for the 2.7 Duratec we're doing. So that'll probably be the next video. So thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.